Beneath the quiet countryside of Cave City, Kentucky, where green fields roll gently above ancient limestone, there are passages that do not forgive mistakes. They twist through the earth like veins, tight, cold, indifferent. On Memorial Day weekend, 3 friends from Chicago came here searching for adventure. They expected mud on their clothes, maybe a few bruises, a story to laugh about on the drive home. Instead, they would face something far more merciless, a single misstep, a narrow slot in the floor, a body wedged in stone. 7 hours, one man would hang suspended in darkness, alive, conscious, and slowly losing his strength, while nearly 200 rescuers tried to free him. This is the fatal breakdown of the Buzzard's Roost cave accident. Memorial Day weekend. Bill, Coughlin, Kevin, and Jim left Chicago before dawn, heading south toward Cave City, Kentucky. They had planned a few days of caving, something physical, something different from office desks and city noise. Buzzard's Roost cave system offered both history and challenge. The commercial tours promised dramatic formations, underground rooms, and an authentic, raw caving experience for those willing to go beyond the standard path. For 2 days, the trip was everything they hoped for. They toured several caves, they laughed in echoing chambers, they crawled through mud, they emerged exhausted and satisfied. On Sunday, May 30th, they signed up for one final descent inside Buzzard's Roost. Morning began safely enough. The first tour was the historic route, permanently lit passages, broad walkways, manageable slopes. It was the kind of underground experience built for families and tourists. Large rooms open up like cathedrals of stone. The path was predictable, controlled, but that wasn't why they had driven from Chicago. After a few hours, they enrolled in the advanced tour. The brochure described it as rugged, unfiltered, a real caving experience. That meant crawling, squeezing, climbing. Entrance to the advanced route began with a narrow crawl, way barely wide enough for an adult to pass. And standing there, staring into the dark slit in the rock, something shifted in Kevin. He hesitated. He told Bill and Jim he would sit this one out, wait on the surface until they returned. There was no argument, no pressure, just a subtle, unspoken relief from Kevin, and a flicker of disappointment from the others. The group heading below would consist of 7, guide Dave Harden, Bill, Jim, and 4 additional participants. Flashlights were handed out. Instructions were simple. Follow the person in front of you, do what they do, and descend. From the beginning, Bill struggled. He stood 6 feet 2 inches tall and weighed over 220 pounds. In open spaces, that meant strength, stability. In limestone corridors barely wider than a human ribcage, it meant friction. The passages narrowed without warning. Jagged rock protrusions caught on clothing. Wall slits forced bodies to twist in unnatural ways. At times, the only way forward was flat on the stomach, pulling with fingertips and pushing with toes. Bill felt the walls press against him. He felt the tightness in his chest, not from exertion, but from awareness. Still, he continued. Dave Harden had led this route many times. If Bill couldn't fit, he assumed the guide would have stopped him at the start. Crawled through a breakdown section, an area littered with fallen rock, evidence of ancient collapses. Then came a feature that would later define the day, a V-shaped slot in the cave floor. To proceed, each person had to descend headfirst into a narrow hole, slide down several feet, twist onto their back, and then climb up the other side, about 8 feet, to rejoin the passage. One by one, they disappeared into the darkness. Bill lowered himself carefully. The rock pressed in on all sides, his shoulders scraped, his hips caught. For a moment, he was wedged, but he could see the faint glow of a flashlight ahead. He exhaled and twisted, shoulders one way, hips the other, arms stretched overhead to make his body as narrow as possible. Slowly, he worked through. When he pulled himself out on the other side, relief washed over him. He had made it. But even in that small triumph, a thought lingered. He would have to come back through it. The cave continued to tighten and open in unpredictable rhythm. After low crawls came vertical challenges. The first rope ladder dropped approximately 45 feet into darkness. Wooden rungs, aged and cracked, dangled from rope. The descent was nearly a free hang, swaying slightly as each caver stepped down into the void. Flashlights from below formed thin beams crossing in the blackness. It was like descending the side of a 3-story building, without walls, without certainty. One by one, they reached the floor. Another ladder followed, roughly 30 feet, partially hidden behind a rock overhang. After nearly 3 hours underground, they arrived at a large chamber, the final stop of the advanced route. Here, Dave told them he would return briefly to the surface to make a call. The group could explore and then retrace their steps when ready. It seemed simple, routine. 30 minutes later, they began their return. Looking up at the 30-foot rope ladder, Bill felt something shift inside him. Climbing down had been difficult. Climbing up would be worse. He started his ascent. Halfway up, dread overtook him. He climbed back down. Others passed him, adjusting the ladder's position to improve access near the overhang. He tried again. This time he reached the protruding rock above. The rungs pressed awkwardly against stone. He strained upward, searching for stable grip. His muscles trembled. He climbed down once more. On his third attempt, he pushed past the overhang and reached higher. His weight shifted. His grip failed. He fell 15 feet. His back struck the rock face. Then came the weightless moment. Brief, disorienting, then blackness. When Bill regained consciousness, he was bleeding from the head. The room felt colder, smaller, more dangerous. Dave was summoned back underground. It was nearing 7:30 p.m. They had already spent hours in the cave. After assessing Bill, Dave believed he was capable of climbing out with assistance. There were customers above ground. A large-scale rescue would create alarm. They decided to move him. With ropes belaying him from above and teammates supporting him from below, Bill climbed the 30-foot ladder, slowly, painfully, then the 45-foot ladder. He was exhausted, but moving. Finally, they reached the V-slot in the floor, the same narrow passage he had navigated earlier. Several members went through ahead, including Jim, who waited on the far side. Dave and Troy positioned themselves behind Bill. Dave instructed him to descend headfirst again, carefully controlling his body past the protrusions. Bill lowered himself, but he was no longer fresh. He was injured, weak. His arms slipped. He slid headfirst to the bottom. And there, his body wedged, one arm pinned beneath his torso, the other trapped behind him, his chest compressed by stone, every breath shallow. He tried to free himself, but the more he moved, the tighter he became. Minutes turned into an hour. Pushing from behind didn't work. Pulling from ahead was impossible without risking further injury. By 10:30 p.m., Bill had been trapped for 3 hours. Worse still, Dave and Troy were now stuck on the far side of Bill's body. He blocked the only exit. The cave temperature hovered around 44 degrees Fahrenheit. They were underdressed for prolonged exposure. They waited. And finally, rescue was called. The Cave City Volunteer Fire Department mobilized. Specialized cave rescue personnel were alerted. Rescuers streamed toward Buzzard's Roost. Nearly 200 people would eventually gather. Inside the cave, space was brutally limited. Only one person at a time could access the narrow V-slot. Bill was upside down, his chest compressed, his arms immobilized, his head wound bandaged, an oxygen mask placed over his face. They attempted to pull him by securing ropes around his legs. The angle was wrong. Each attempt caused pain, but no movement. Rescuers tried chipping away rock near his head. The limestone was unstable. Small fragments fell into his face. A collapse was possible. Bill's breathing became labored. He was hypothermic, still conscious at first. By 1 a.m., he had lost consciousness. He still had a pulse. There was no solution. At 5 a.m., 7 hours after becoming wedged upside down, Bill Coughlin was pronounced dead. The official cause, compressive and positional asphyxia. But the crisis was not over. Dave and Troy remained trapped beyond Bill's body. Supplies, blankets, heat packs, food were passed through the narrow opening. For 8 more hours, rescuers worked to remove Bill's body. Later, the coroner would state that the methods used could not have been applied to a living victim. At nearly 1 p.m. Monday afternoon, after more than 20 hours underground and 40-degree temperatures, Dave and Troy were finally freed. Above ground, questions mounted. Bill, Jim, and Troy were inexperienced cavers. Should they have been permitted on such a route? Why was additional fall protection not in place? Why was Bill moved before receiving full medical evaluation? An inquest later determined that the cave operator and guide, Dave Hardin, bore responsibility. Proper safety equipment could have prevented the initial fall. A trained cave rescue team should have assisted before attempting extraction. Bill Coughlin's family filed a negligence lawsuit. The case was settled for an undisclosed amount. Buzzard's Roost remains a quiet cave beneath Kentucky soil. The limestone walls do not speak of what happened, but the story lingers, a reminder that caves are not amusement rides. They are indifferent spaces carved over millions of years, spaces where gravity, geometry, and human error intersect without mercy. Bill Coughlin entered seeking adventure. He left as a warning etched in stone. In places where the earth narrows to the width of a body, there is no room for miscalculation, and sometimes there is no way back out.